Hello there, and welcome back to what I finished in whatever month of the year it is. This month it is for February, and looking back on it, really didn't get through many movie shows or games or things like that. February was still very much the month where I kind of say that it was a bit of fatigue, and I just kind of took January, February off from watching a lot of things or playing a lot of things, which is very well explained by the amount of shorts that I ended up watching instead, just pretty much as filler for kind of like my watch log. So shorts like Villain, The Ballad of Anna Quinn, Flight, and The Breakthrough all were pretty much filler. I'd say the most notable of the two are Villain and The Breakthrough, because Villain includes Bella Ramsey, who can obviously act. Then there's also The Breakthrough, which has, and I don't remember what the name of the actress is, but she was the main character in Past Lives, one of the most critically acclaimed movies of 2023. So there was merit to watching both of these. The other two had potential. I would say Ballad of Mad Quinn was probably the worst of the four I watched, mainly just because it does things for reasons, and it's not really clarified as to why that's happening. And you know, a lot of times with shorts, they're a lot like short stories where it's just close-ended and it's kind of just straight to the point and it doesn't explain anything to you. But there's a big difference between making one where it's thought-provoking and then this one where it isn't very thought-provoking and doesn't really provide, I want to say, enough context to really try to think about what happened and like what it means. Luckily, we watched a couple movies this month. The first of which was the Lego Movie, in celebration of the film's 10th anniversary. I'm very subjective when I talk about this movie, especially because it's very much a part of my childhood, and very much just watching this movie and then it having the impact it did on such a young mind like mine, much like many other people, was just an amazing experience. So much so that we as in my family, started having Taco Tuesdays because of this movie. And I think that's a good example of how it kind of affected a child's mind, at least. As for now, when I'm more so an adult, this movie's arguably as good as it was back then, but obviously for different reasons. I still feel like there's a good bit of comedy in the movie that still lands, especially a lot of the moments that happen while the main characters are in Cuckoo Land. I still think that some of those jokes hold up well. And the best part about this movie is that the jokes really only work because it is literally just a pop culture infestation, because there's so many characters from stories and from real life. They can just go to town on some of the jokes, and that's why some of the moments in the movie are quite comedic. But the main thing that I realized upon rewatch was simply just how strong the messaging was. I think it's in part because of Lord and Miller's sort of impact on production, because, you know, they were pretty much the directors and writers for the movie, and they have a certain style in terms of how they make the movie, in terms of how it displays its themes, and the dynamics between characters. Like, a good example is Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, which they also directed. That one very much has this sort of father and son drama behind it that children probably won't really realize or focus on. That's why they have the gigantic food items throughout that movie. But that's also another great movie by the two directors and writers. With the Lego movie, it was more so about talking about people in general and how a lot of times we neglect the uniqueness that we have from everyone else. Because Emmett in the movie very much deals with trying to fit in, but he tries so hard to fit in that he doesn't really recognize what makes him different from everyone else. He just tries to like everything that everyone else does, which is a general theme in the movie, especially since President Business is essentially herding these people into liking the same thing. But the thing is that everyone has at least one thing that makes them who they are, whereas Emmett's trying so hard to like those things, to connect with people, that he isn't connecting with them. And then everyone else just kind of treats him terribly, and makes him... I mean, there's literally a point in the movie where they say that he's nothing, which... You don't... I mean, as a human being... I mean, they're Lego pieces, but if they were a human being, I'd be shocked if they didn't realize that what they said was offensive. But it really doesn't matter, because it kind of drives that whole idea of, like, even when you don't think you're special, there is something that makes you special. And I think that's the real takeaway from the movie. And then also, there's still that father and son dynamic towards the end of the movie. Between real life Will Ferrell, not President Business Will Ferrell, and his son, whatever. The man upstairs, that's what Will Ferrell's character's name is. It's a movie with kids in its target audience, you know? Not to say that adults are not in that target audience, but like kids are a part of the target audience. But I don't think this is a perfect movie. Like, there are jokes that don't really stick for people of an older demographic, but for the most part, that's like the themes make up for the jokes that you liked as a kid, and then also the movie's main song still holds up to this day. I still love the end credits. Not just because it's bricks and things like that, and they did all that, but also like the end part of it where they're like building up the logo for the movie. The backing track from Everything Is Awesome that plays during that is I've loved it since the moment I heard it, because it's just so... I don't even know how to explain it. It just almost gives you chills in a way. And then next we had Nimona. This is a very different story compared to the Lego movie. I think the first thing I immediately want to say is that I don't know why not many people have watched this movie. I obviously more people have watched The Boy and the Heron and Across the Spider-Verse than this movie, and I bring those two movies up because they're also nominated for any category with animated features in it, across a bunch of different award shows and things like that. I think the movie even won the Annie Award for the category. So this movie has beaten those two movies. And after watching it, I realized why, which is simply that, like, it just focuses on things way more than you expect it to. Like, I mean, you can even look at my review for this movie as well. There's so many themes that it brings up that are so incredibly relevant to the times that we live in right now that I would have been amazed if it ever came out at the time that it was supposed to. I think it was like 2019, 2020 that it was originally supposed to come out. Because if it weren't for everything that we had realized after going through all this stuff that we've been through since 2019, I don't think this movie would have had as big of an impact as it did. I mean, it still doesn't really have an impact, but it should have an impact. And it's incredibly relevant to the struggles and the issues that we deal with in society today. Not to mention, it also deals with fearing something people don't understand fully, which is a very notorious issue that we have, where, for example, something like AI, we don't fully understand it, but we sure as heck know how to take advantage of it. And it kind of follows the same line when regarding Nimona and her shape-shifting powers, where people just don't understand it, and because of that, they just immediately fear it, because it's such a strange concept to the people in the movie that how could they be fine with it? And you kind of realize that that's the kind of people the kingdom in the movie include, because the main character is of the lower class, and people don't really like that. But I think the movie also goes out of its way to really exemplify that. Like, Boldheart wears gray armor where everyone else who is trying to be a knight wears white. And that's not even the only example of using a specific color palette for certain things in the movie. Like, they do that with Nimona, obviously, when she shapeshifts. And also just pretty much any sort of lighting effect in the movie. Like, there's literally a point in the movie with Boldheart and Goldenloin, where Goldenloin, like, he's like a prodigy. Essentially, he's essentially seen as this heavenly figure, and there's a point in the movie where Boldheart is kind of like away from the sunlight, and then Goldenloin's just standing in it. It's just lighting like that does that. Oh, and speaking of Goldenloin Boldheart, this movie has queer romance, and they make it very explicit about 5 minutes in. And as soon as I saw that, I realized why Disney did not want to finish this movie, because they didn't even get 5 minutes into this. And I know Disney's getting, or at least trying to get better at dealing with that kind of romantic sort of trope. But listen, Disney doesn't like this stuff. So much so that before they canceled the movie, they pushed back on the queer romance side of things. And then you could also argue that Nimona's on some level of the queer spectrum. Whether or not her shapeshifting is an allegory for gender fluidness or transgenderness, who knows? She might also be a lesbian because of a friend that she met when she was younger who trusted her and was okay with her shapeshifting. And obviously, that friend turns her back on her, which leads into probably the most surprising part about the movie, which is Nimona's poor mental health. And this is something especially that very few movies these days have done, which I'm really surprised about. But this movie does it explicitly, to the point, spoiler alert, by the way. But no, at one point, Nimona literally tries to kill herself. And, it's not like a sort of thing where they have to sacrifice themselves for the greater good. No, she literally stands in front of something sharp and tries to impale herself. Like, on screen, by the way. And the fact that this was included in any movie is... like, you just don't see it these days still. And for this movie to be the one to do something like that so explicitly is arguably incredible. Because, again, this movie also has children in it, in a part of its target audience. So, these themes that they display throughout the entire movie are just way beyond any that you would expect for a movie like it. Which is obviously why it's nominated. And because of all those themes and because of how impactful and thought-provoking they are, I really, really enjoyed this movie. The problem with it is its first act is relatively slow in pace. I do feel it takes a little bit to pick up speed, but once it picks up speed, it just flies by, and it just does a really, really good job. It's just unfortunate that first act just wasn't as good as the rest of the movie. I unfortunately don't think it's gonna win something like the Oscars, frankly, because it's fighting against Across the Spider-Verse and The Boy and the Heron, which are really, really hard to beat, especially since I consider Across the Spider-Verse to be one of the best movies I've ever seen, even though I feel like Into the Spider-Verse just structurally is just a perfect movie. But this one is subjectively a perfect movie, mainly because of how it is visually and the the general themes and ideas it brings up. And then The Boy and the Heron, it's a Miyazaki movie. It's literally a walking piece of art, which is why I was fine with the first act being slow, because you're literally just watching frames you can froth at. Like, they're that good looking. But after watching Nimona, I'm like, oh, I have the same two problems with these movies, so therefore I can't give The Boy and the Heron 10 out of 10, which I originally gave it, but then I bumped it down to a 9 for the same as Nimona. And that was about it for the month. Did pick up really easily within this first week of March, because I'm home, so it's kind of a nice time to watch some stuff, and that's how I realized, yes, I'm out of my fatigue phase, which is good. As for my backlog editions, there are 9. A lot of them are just sequel seasons, so you got things like Abbott Elementary, Star Wars Bad Batch Season 3, or Abbott Elementary Season 3, I should say, Formula 1 Drive to Survive Season 6, Tokyo Vice Season 2, and Halo Season 2. Don't ask me why I have Halo Season 2. It is literally just because it's a Halo show. But pretty much all of those I'm interested in watching. With the exception of Drive to Survive Season 6, I just gotta watch the other seasons. I might actually have not watched Drive to Survive Season 5 yet, but that's a different issue. Another one that I have on this list in terms of movies or shows is Shogun. And as of recording this, I've actually watched the first episode of that show. And yeah, it's really good. Wow, what a shocker. People have the right consensus for this. But I think the most interesting part about this show is just I was cautiously optimistic about it going in. That is before it took off with critics and audiences, because it had the makings of a great show. I'm not 100% familiar with FX's productions. Obviously, they have something like The Bear, but I think I've also watched Why the Last Man. But, I feel they could be hit or miss. But I think I've started to realize that they hit more times than they miss. So I should have taken more of a chance on this. But hey, at least I'm starting to watch it anyways, so hopefully I'll have that done by the end of the month. As for video games, we got 3 left of the 9. We have Persona 3 Reload, Pacific Drive, and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. With Rebirth, it's kind of the same thing. I need to play technically I don't need to play the first game, but I would kind of like to play the first remake of Final Fantasy VII, just to understand completely what's going on and how the game mechanics work. But the thing about that is I could technically play it on my computer. I just don't think it'll be that good of quality while playing it on my computer, which basically means that I need to get a PlayStation. I don't have one of those, so Rebirth's gonna have to wait until after I play Remake. Probably after I play the original. Next, we have, obviously, Pacific Drive, which is, out of the 3, probably the most likely one that I'll play the soonest. I actually played the demo for this game, and I really, really enjoyed it. I think I'm obviously subjective with that because it's a car game, and I think what it does with its game mechanic, with it being a survival game, is really entertaining and really gravitating to play. The only thing I could say is just it's enough to get me to play the game at some point, which is good, which is kind of the purpose of playing a demo. Then there's Persona 3 Reload, which, look, I haven't played a Persona game yet, so this is kind of in that back catalog of playing the games. I already have Persona 4 Golden, which was given to me by a friend And then I'm probably just gonna buy Persona 5 Royal for the Switch soon, because I know I'm gonna have to play that at some point. And then 3 Reload is kind of the third one in this 3 game group to play, and really the only Persona games I need to play, because Atlas does not care about the first 2 games. I don't even know what the first 2 games are about, I'll be honest. Obviously, with Persona and Final Fantasy, I gotta play previous games, or I would like to play previous games. And then Pacific Drive is the most likely one that I would play, because I really enjoyed the game mechanic, and the survival aspect to it. It's really tedious, but I mean, I think that there's a sense of enjoyment and novelty to that. So I'll probably never get to it, but it's there on my backlog, on my wish list. So here's hoping. And that's gonna be it for this month. I will have I have been working on finishing Danganronpa V3. I hoped to finish it last month. I didn't, but as of right now, I only have the final trial to get through. So I'll probably I might have time to kick that out today. I won't review that because I feel like that'll be kind of weird, giving a review for the 3rd game, but not the first 2, even though I've also technically reviewed all 3 games, which I did a couple years ago. It would just be weird to review it, especially since it's taken me 2.5 years to finish it. So that's going to be just a finish game and not really do anything else with it. So that's going to be it for this month. Look forward to whenever I get to doing next month, if at all. Hopefully I do. And hopefully this time I'll be able to do that sooner than doing this one. By that I mean hopefully I don't get a cold again. That'll stop me from recording it.